Yeah, well, you'd frozen for a minute at my end. I wasn't sure if it was me or you. Well, that'll be interesting. Mind you, there's Eleanor there. I'm sure between us we could busk something.
Good morning. Yes, I snuck in. I'm at home. I'll be on campus by about 12. I'm a bit further, but not much.
You're en route, but I'm in the office. Yeah, early bird today.
You're in pole position to take over then if there's problems, Francis.
Well, I don't know where we are. Our offices are. Sometimes it can be terrible, but yeah, as it goes along, if you suddenly freeze mid pose, I'll check in again.
Okay, it looks like it's come back. I'm sorry, concerned about the network. Hopefully it fixes up. Apologies if it doesn't. Am I back now? I think I'm back now, yeah?
Yep, you're here.
Okie doke. Like, let's just power through and hope for the best. So I was just going to say I have worked fairly significantly in helping a company migrate to an agile culture, because migrating to an agile culture was sort of necessary for the technology transformation I was working on. But also, in this lecture, whilst it will have elements of classical project management elements, it also will be thinking a much more specific question, which is how to do project management in analytics projects, which is not exactly the same thing. Okay, I will keep pushing forward. So these guys, Standish, they were a really big name 15 or so years ago. They produced these reports, I think every 5 years or something like that, that basically looked at the state of the market for projects. So this was the last one I could find, 2020, but invariably they all had the same message, that around 50% of projects may be somewhat completed but are considered challenged. Either they didn't deliver everything they promised to, it didn't work quite as well as it should, or it was delivered late or over budget. Cyberpunk 2077 or whatever. Of those that aren't challenged, every fine. Right. Just try the whole reboot. Let's see if that works. Hope so. Anyway, just rebooted the whole thing. So hopefully that will return. TLDR of this slide. Lots of projects across all sectors really struggle. Analytics projects, evidence there that actually the situation is even worse. So a very influential article released about 5 years ago now found that nearly 90% of data science projects never make it into production. The work is done, that the models are done, all the stuff you're doing in AIP at the moment, and 90% of them never actually get released into the wild. So the evidence is there that this is a significant issue. Why might you think? We'll do two things at the moment. We'll take in the quality of this XKCD cartoon, but also I'd like to pose you the question: why do you think this is? Why do you think the success rates of analytics projects are even worse than the success rates of traditional projects? Hoping you can hear me. I think you can. Why might analytics projects be harder to deliver on time and on budget? Francis, Eleanor, feel free to chip in if you have ideas. Hopefully I'm not frozen. Doesn't look like I am. Poor engagement with stakeholders. Yeah, if you've got a specialization, stick with it. If the only tool you use is a hammer, Eleanor, everything starts to look like a nail. But yeah, I think it is a valid point. Yeah, understanding. This could well be an issue. Do you mean to say that not a lot of the stakeholders understand the work that is being done by the analytics team? I think that is absolutely a real case. Yeah, problem communication. This is all good. Yeah, unclear problem at the start. Well done. You have graduated from UBFA. Assumptions. Yeah, hard to be guaranteed. Brilliant. I like that last one in particular. Lots of good ideas here. And I think we'll see some of these come through across the presentation, which hopefully will be seamless from here. Okay. One thing that does need to be reinforced, that is, unless we do, last minute scrambles everywhere, and we'll talk again a bit about this one. We can do the best analytics in the world. We can do the best problem structuring in the world. We can do all of the math, the data management, whatever it might be. But unless we can actually get that over the line with the organization, so someone had the point here, not being able to communicate the value of our work, not understanding the work that's being done, the potential impact not properly understood. Unless we can get over that hurdle, there will be no change. Unless someone actually buys into our work, nothing will change. And if nothing changes, all we've done is cost the business money. Yeah, we only are profit generating when we actually can enable positive change. Otherwise, we've just sat there for 6 months, wasting everyone's time, wasting everyone's money. Let's go back to Einstein. So we talked about Einstein 2 weeks ago, and an alleged Einstein quote that if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. Now, far be it from me to say Einstein was wrong, but Einstein was wrong. And the reason Einstein was wrong is that Einstein was a theoretical physicist, so he never actually had to do anything in the real world. In the real world, we have to not only solve the problem, but implement that solution as well. So I will correct, rather presumptuously, Einstein. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 30 minutes thinking about the problem, 5 minutes thinking about the solution, and 25 minutes thinking about the implementation. Because unless we do that part properly, unless we actually bring about change, it doesn't matter what happened before. Everything that happened before was a waste of money, essentially. So project management, for all its faults, is a necessary evil for us to be able to actually deploy and realize the benefits of our work. Okay, so the next slide asks if all analytics projects are the same. And I'd say largely no. I'm going to do a little bit of a crude generalization. There is absolutely a crudeness to it, but we can approximately say that the split between projects you'll work on is basically the same as the split between my two categories of analytics as research or analytics as software. And we'll look at each of those one by one. So in the analytics as software world, sorry, as research world, you'll be more likely to be talking about things like the scientific methodology and waterfall. And we'll just touch into what characterizes those approaches. In the software world, you'll be far more likely to be adopting something like agile project management. And again, we will talk through some of the key challenges, the key things you might get involved in when working in this way. This lecture is not targeted at someone who wants to become a project manager overall or a scrum master or anything of that kind. But the absolute reality of things is you will be working on projects. You will be working with project management software. You will be working in a project management style. Varies by organization, varies by the type of work that you're doing, essentially, right? But one way or another, it will be something that affects you. And it's something we need to think through and make sure we're getting the most value we can from. Put it that way. Okay, so once we've looked at those two contrasting approaches, I will give you a few thoughts. Now, this last part is a big chunk of it's quite polemic, kind of my perspective on things, not necessarily hard facts, but I think a lot of what I say in this is going to be generally agreed upon, essentially. Spoilers, it's not quite as simple as that. Yes, we can get the textbooks. Yes, we can read up is how waterfall should be done. Yes, up same. When working in and days quite different. So we'll start. Really, the fun comes from the idea of the scientific. If you're doing science, the idea observe, you come up with something that you're interested in studying or something that your PhD advisor. You have some hypothesis, you have an cause, theoretical, what is that thing out and you and so at the point with times the insufficient asking well is now I up to date, unfortunately. I'll go a bit slow.
Hopefully, everyone, Michael is trying to get back in. We'll just pause for a minute or two.
I have just
Are you back in the room, Michael?
again will an alternative solution to this. I will try answers.
You're still a bit choppy from my end. I don't know if that's true for everyone else.
Okay. The time how easy and test alternative platform. Can you hear me?
Still very sort of choppy.
Let's take.
Bear with us, guys. I'm sure Michael is trying to sort things out at his end. I'm just communicating with Michael via Teams, and he's asked me to pick up. The only issue is I don't know if I can control the slides. Oh, Michael, you're back.
I'm going to try to turn off the camera, as suggested. It doesn't seem to be a problem with the bandwidth in general, though. But I will try again. And then otherwise, Francis, you're taking over, mate.
Yeah, the only thing I don't know is how to control the slides, but
you'd have to probably share them yourself.
With that,
you have to reshare them. Do you want to download them just in case? Okay, I'm going to jump in without the camera into fast mode. So, yeah, fundamentally, a lot of this borrows from the traditional view of how science should be conducted. That we start with some problem space, something we're interested in. We formulate hypotheses. We design some testing of those hypotheses, essentially, and then, you know, if once that has been fully processed, we release it as new theory in publication. Of the slide itself is a meme. In reality, very little academic research properly follows that approach, and more often than not, we're just doing whatever we think will keep the funders happy, and yeah, in a much more haphazard and non-theoretical way. Did that work better for sound, or is it still lagging?
No, much smoother.
Okay, I did also try and reboot my modem in between. So anyway, we'll keep going then. Let me know, please, if it starts going. Francis is going to be ready in the wings. Okay, so this is, you know, we're establishing based on a very long tradition of the scientific approach. As we moved into the world of real world projects, software projects, construction projects, what have you, fundamentally, we adopted many of them same approaches. And that's over time become known as the waterfall method. Now, I am going to describe this to you in a software-y kind of way, but yeah, it applies really to any kind of project. So the waterfall method says we do everything at a discrete set of stages. We first speak to the client, understand all of their requirements, maybe create an official document to have those requirements signed off. Only once that's been agreed do we start designing the product, and only when that's finished we start implementing it, testing it, and then obviously at the end the idea is the product is released and working correctly. So it's called the waterfall because of this idea that each stage flows down onto the next. The work of the requirements section flows down into design, which flows down into implementation, and so on. I thought it might be useful just to overlay waterfall alongside scientific method and alongside CRISP-DM. And I think it really just highlights that they all share a very common thread going through them. So in CRISP-DM, which Nershan will be talking to you about, she'll be talking about business understanding. If we're doing scientific research, that's really understanding the literature, understanding the previous work in this domain. And if we're doing software, that's really speaking to the end user, understanding their requirements for the product. So I won't go through all of these, but we can see that really at every stage there is significant overlap. So all of these methods have really a common theme. Normally what we're doing is just tweaking the name, essentially, right? Or to an extent, when we start working with data, there are slight differences, but really not significant ones. It's still kind of the same approach. So when we're working in this kind of methodology, really when we're working on any kind of project, particularly if we're working on a project in a team, as a team sport, fundamentally, we will need to deconstruct and decompose that project. So I know you've been given your group work assignments already for some of your modules, and I'm sure the thing you immediately did without any real instruction at that first meeting was break down the brief that you've been given into separate chunks of work, and different people took on different things. This idea of deconstruction is inherent to anything we do that is a long-running piece of work, essentially. And I've just given a talk on AI agents last week to colleagues here at WBS, and ultimately that's the same thing. It's AI agents is really the challenge with AI agents is thinking about how I deconstruct a long process of work and assign different specialized agents to work on different parts of it. Whatever area it is, it seems to be a natural truth to the world that we need to do this process. In the world of waterfall, we would often talk about a WBS, not that WBS, a different one, work breakdown structure, which is a fancy way of saying create a task list of all the things required to complete the project. So drawing from the literature, they look something like this. So this is about landscaping the house or making the house garden area look nice. What we've done is we've broken down that overall project into a set of major stages. We would call these summary tasks. They're tasks that are one task on their own. They are completed by completing all of the tasks within them. Those individual tasks, such as identify sprinkler locations, dig trenches, install pipe, etc., etc. In WBS, we would call those work packages. They're individual chunks of work that we're going to do. By completing all four of these things, in this case, 2.21 to 2.24, if we do all of those things, we have successfully installed the sprinkler system. So install sprinkler system is a summary task. It's a task completed by completing other tasks, essentially. Nothing particularly more fancy than that. It's just a way of documenting what we think needs to be done to achieve our overall goal. Often as a subsequent, after this, anyway, I think I got confused which subsequent means. I think it is subsequent. Subsequently, after this, we may well then move on to AON, activity on node. It's one thing to understand what tasks we have, but we also need to understand what order we should work on them in. Which tasks depend on other tasks. So AON, again, it's a diagramming method. It's about us basically creating a flow chart of the work required. So here is a silly example of one making a pasta dish. We start with subsequent, yeah. Okay. You start with getting the ingredients out essentially, and then you would go through. So what we see here in this particular case is that we can do some parallel streams of work essentially. So we have a parallel stream firstly looking at preparing the pasta and a parallel stream of preparing the sauce. Now we don't have these dependencies upon each other to do these. Putting the pasta in the water doesn't depend on me chopping the carrots and adding to the pan. It depends on me just boiling the water. So we have these two diverging streams here, but those streams then do come together at the end. So once we've made the pasta, once we've made the sauce, stir-fried the vegetables, we can combine them all together. So it's a way of visualizing exactly what is happening across the course of a project and seeing the dependencies. So quite often we'll talk about critical path analysis and concepts like this in terms of where do we need to really focus to make sure things finish on time. There's no point optimizing a task down here when it's depending on an earlier task that is going slowly, essentially. I would argue then really once we get from this kind of work, particularly the WBS, that leads us into really something like a Gantt chart. Now, I'm sure you have all seen Gantt charts before. They are one of the most common ways. Mapping in the critical path, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was referencing. Gantt chart. So the purpose of a Gantt chart is so that you can lie about how long the project will take. I joke, but most Gantt charts are obviously very unrealistic to what happens. Every year for the dissertation pathway, they ask the students to create a Gantt chart of the work they're going to do on your dissertation. Invariably, none of the deadlines are ever met, but that is the nature of Gantt charts. But this is really just a translation of the work we've already done. If we thought through our WBS, if we thought through our project plan, a set of tasks overall, it's relatively easy to then translate that across into a nice visual representation like a Gantt chart. So this shows us dependencies. It shows us that in this case, this work package depends upon the completion of this one, and so on. We can draw our pathways, and we've also then got an estimation of how long things will take. So for all of their flaws, Gantt charts are a logical and useful visualization of what has been agreed in the project. It's a very whistle-stop tour. Eleanor, did you want to bring in something else on WBS? More than happy if you wanted to add something in.
No, that's okay. We'll save time.
I think I have a moment, so if there is anything you wanted to comment, do feel free to, or put it into the chat.
I think really I put it into the chat, but yeah, your activity on Node really helps you to map that critical path, and really that's the one that your steering committee is most likely to be most interested in.
No, absolutely. So this is really it's often non-obvious where you're going to go wrong. Like you can think of all the tasks, but it's often very non-obvious where the problems will arise. And quite a lot of these project delays come from not really properly thinking through exactly where the risk lies. By seeing things as a list of dependencies and a pathway through, knowing what needs to come first to get things done, it's a really important part of understanding the risk.
It can also really help understand who your critical people are, who's likely to get overloaded at particular parts of the project, and who you might delegate to support if that became necessary.
Absolutely, yeah. So absolutely, when we're thinking about this as a team sport, recognizing where the bottlenecks are and where things can go wrong, it can make the difference between success and failure. Thank you, Eleanor. Okay, so we're going to roll on to software, and we're going to roll on to thinking a little bit about Agile. I am assuming from lack of comments that actually the sound is okay now, and it was presumably the computer struggling to pass my video. But do let me know. Go on.
Much smoother.
Fantastic. Okay, so the secret is not looking at me. If you don't look at me, it all goes smoothly. Okay, we'll pivot into the world of software now specifically, and a methodology that came as an alternative to waterfall, I think it'd be fair to say, around about 40 years ago, the agile approach. But first, before we talk about why the methodology is different, let's ask a different question. Is software itself different? Is a software project inherently different to a traditional product? So we've got a short documentary video here. I will accept no comments. There might be, it will be bullied.
I'll just send Michael a message on Teams saying he's gone again. Okay, Michael's asked me to take over, so I'm just going to, if you bear with me for a minute or two, I will upload the slides and see if I can pick up. Right, okay, bear with. I'll just scroll through. It was the video, wasn't it, that Michael was about to show. Now, I don't know how we get the video to run. Any thoughts, Eleanor?
Do we have the
I'm just having a look.
The link in the notes
Yeah,
pages.
on a separate screen.
Right.
Uploading.
Can you hear me?
Michael, I've just we weren't sure how to get the video to run.
I think skip the video because we're having problems already with bandwidth.
Okay, do you want to say roughly what the video was about?
Oh yeah, I was just about. Let's go on to the next slide, and I'll do it from there.
I tell you what, I'll control the slides and you chat.
Can I? Oh, I can do it from here. Okay, cool. I will chat over it. I've just tried to reboot the DNS server, so hopefully that fixes it. I would not be surprised. There is actually an overrunning project in the background. I think someone shared the video link. There's an overrunning project outside on my street where people are digging up various parts of the road. I would not be surprised if it's their fault. But anyway, we'll carry on. We'll carry on from here. Hopefully we can get some resolution. I can only apologize for the situation. So before I was rudely interrupted, I was posing the question about whether software projects in themselves are different. And absolutely, one of the key differences, what the video shows, is that there is often quite a different culture in software, a kind of geek culture area, which the video is just a humorous video, summarizes or makes fun of a little bit, that largely speaking we are a slightly different set of people with different cultures in the software space. So there's definitely a part of that. But I would also say there are significant other differences in software. One being that we are not building a product in the same way, that because our product is code, we don't have the same requirements we would have if we were building a building. If you're building a building, then you need to absolutely work in a very specific order, where you build the foundation first and then the walls and then the roof. You can't just start at the roof, but quite often in software we can. So that led to sort of an exploration of different ways of working. And in particular, Agile. There's lots of flavors of Agile out there. The one on this slide, as a representative of it, is Scrum Agile, but there are indeed others. So how does Agile differ? So the idea of Agile is that we start with this notion of a vision of what we want the product to do, but we don't go and write it down as a requirements document as we might in the waterfall approach. So we've got this approximation of what we want the thing to include, the features we expect our product to have, but they are not necessarily fully documented. And we would call this log. That's all the things we'd need to the project. In terms of working on focusing around, so vary from anything on to 4 weeks of work. Most organizations work would be a 2 weeks of work. We have this, we'll just say 2. Now, we have to include tasks. We have to out what we include. Part of that, able to estimate our task. So think about how it will take complete within our courses they will need. Release that new feature. So 2 weeks, whatever it might be, a release thing we are in type, shall we say, so that it has more features, and she would have worked through the whole of the backlog and all the features have been built. So rather than it being a sequence of tasks, these sprints kind of include all the work. They'll include some working with the client requirements, include some design work, they'll include some coding, obviously, and they'll also include testing as well, perhaps even. So those different included the block of work. Yeah. Moving on. Okay. So these pinch of salt. You will find is the is full of claims why is infinitely better than waterfall. Absolutely with a pinch. One of them is the presentation, a well-known project and concept, the idea iron triangle. In every we have these facts, the requirements, the things we have to go for the technique things, cost of this project, and the idea are always repeating things. If it's going to take a lot of features take more time. If we things really features, that's going to increase cost competition. But
Okay, he's gone again. I'll tell you what, just to keep it flowing, I don't know if he's going to make any more points on that slide. And Eleanor, you please chip in too if there's anything you want to say here, but we'll move on until he gets back.
Sure. I was going to say that some of you might have seen the triangle represented as time, quality and cost rather than time, scope and cost. And I think that's just reflecting how from the user or client point of view, often the quality is stipulated in the requirements. So this is just a slightly different nuance of how to represent that triangle, just to allay any confusions that might have arisen there. Thanks, Francis.
And was Michael making a comment about the difference between waterfall and agile, or should I move on to the next slide?
I have to admit, I'm not quite sure because I
yeah,
can't
my
read
back.
clearly.
You are.
Oh, Michael's back.
We've just been filling time. We weren't sure whether you wanted to contrast waterfall with agile.
One more comment on the agile part of it. Yeah, the idea then for the agile part of it, we're effectively fixing cost and time because we fix our work into these sprints of set length. We effectively fix the time they take. It's gone again, isn't it? Yeah, it's not working.
Oh, he's gone again. I'll tell you what, let's move on to the next slide because I like the next slide and I know.
Go ahead, Francis. I think that's best.
Yeah. Yeah. So this slide, I guess, is fairly obvious, isn't it? From the little diagrams in there. The idea of the waterfall is that you incrementally add to your process sort of incrementally builds such that you start from scratch, and that each stage you incrementally add something to what you had planned to do from the very start, so that you incrementally add the bits of the car as you go through the process. Whereas the bottom one is much more of a conceptual nature, and through the use of agile, I guess the idea is that at each stage of the agile you are working towards something, and that over time that may the idea is that over time you improve the little sprints that you're doing. Michael says he's back on his mobile, so let's just see whether are you with us, Michael? Are you talking? Are we in the process of joining? Anything you want to add, Eleanor, while we wait?
I was going to say I might comment on the diagram. I think it's a really lovely representation in that it expresses the idea that at stage one in the agile you're looking at some means of transport. At stage two, you may be putting a little bit more support in for the user with the handbars. Then at stage three, you're adding some power. Stage four, you're feeling you want a bit more power. Stage five, you're thinking, what about other passengers and luggage. But I think the danger with that is that you might get the idea that a great deal is flexible. I think it's important to think about which features of the end product it is that you're focusing on in each of the sprints, and not to interpret this diagram as meaning that you could completely change things. What this diagram I believe is trying to represent is the idea that it is still focused on providing some sort of means of transport. So that's probably what I would have said around this slide.
Fab. No, he's not with us yet. So let's move on to
it's also, I guess, a little bit more exploratory, isn't it? You know, when you have this designed for a car, you were saying, you know, we know in advance exactly where we're going. With Agile, we're more saying we know in advance what it is we're striving to produce, and we're going to produce those different elements through those different sprints.
Thanks, Eleanor. I'm just typing a message to Michael because he's got Michael has no microphone on his mobile, and what Michael has said is, let me just type this thing.
Shall we move on to the next slide in the meantime?
Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
1 second. I'm just messaging Michael. Right, so there we go. You've got that. So yes, Michael has he's joined via his mobile, but he's got no voice. So what Michael has said is that he will make a recording of this of the full video without interruption for you guys. What I've just checking with Michael is whether he actually wants us to bring up any particular slides now, or whether we should simply abandon the session. So just bear with for a moment or two while Michael responds, and then we will know whether or not we are going to carry on, or whether we will...
yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm joining via laptop. I think I will be best to record this as a video for you. It's not strictly necessary for the lecture workshop, and we can pick up on those points in there, but I appreciate that this has been a suboptimal experience thus far. So I think it might be easier if I just actually record this session as a short video and release it that way. What do we think? Rather than have a bit more bouncing around with poor connection.
Sure, that sounds sensible. I think at this stage we have only 11 minutes left. In any case.
Exactly. So I think it might be better to work that way. So again, I apologise for the connection. Nothing much can be done, unfortunately, my side. I have tried all I can on it, but I will record the session and post it to my WBS this evening. So on the plus side, though, you will get 10 minutes back in your lives for now. I will record the video version and release it out to you. There's nothing critical. There's nothing on the critical path, to pick up Eleanor's early point in respect to the lecture workshop.
Okay. What we could maybe do, I don't know if it will work in relation to the content we haven't covered, but maybe we should put up the quiz slide for any students that want to have a go at that. Although it doesn't.
Well, let me release the video first before we go into the quiz, and I'll put the link in there as well. I can easily just sort of jump on record tonight and record it for you. Good news, if you did want to hear more of me, I will be speaking to you in about an hour's time anyway at the PG Essentials session. And certainly I don't think anything we've not been able to cover in this dodgy session we will be able to pick up in the lecture workshops. Okay, thank you for your patience. What is her? I don't understand the question, sorry. What is happening in the PG Essentials session? We are talking about electives. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you at the lecture workshops either later today or tomorrow.